Hi, friends. Welcome back to Shut Up, Tell Me More. I have such a good episode for you today. Susan Morgan Taylor is here. She has been a somatic sex therapist for over 25 years. And if you're going, what is a somatic sex therapist? You are going to find out. Susan has opened up my eyes to so much about intimacy and sexual relationships and relationships just in general. So I cannot wait to bring this conversation to you. Hi, Susan. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, hello. Thank you so much for having me. And I just want to correct the record before we go on. I have over 25 years in somatic approaches to healing, and I've been a somatic sex therapist for over a decade. So just to clarify there on that, thank you so much for
Okay.
being here. Yes.
Thank you for
Can't wait for our
clarifying.
conversation.
I didn't realize tell me the difference between like somatic relationships and somatic sex therapy.
Yeah, so somatic really just means the body. It just means that we're incorporating the sensations, the feelings we're actually accessing from a different place rather than just the mind. So my training is actually in traditional mental health therapy. I was a licensed professional counselor for about a decade, but I've always had an aspect of work. I was a massage therapist for 25 years, a dancer, an intuitive healer, and I've always really had this proclivity to using really the wisdom of the body and in moving away a little bit from just the analytical mind, which we see more in traditional talk therapy. So when we talk about somatic sex therapy, what that really means, at least in the scope of work that I do, I don't necessarily touch my clients or do hands-on work. There are some threads of somatic sexual healing that does involve touch. In my work, what I'm really doing is helping the client to connect more deeply with their own body, with their own sensations, and then learning how to access that wisdom to inform the therapy and inform the work. Because anytime we're working with sex or relationships, sex especially, these things happen in our body. So just talking about a problem or a challenge, it's helpful, but it reaches its limits. And that's something that I really saw when I was working in more of a clinical, traditional mental health setting. There's really just a limit to the talking part. So I really got very interested, actually, very early on in my training as a mental health therapist in the somatic approaches. And I have found that that's really the best way. And one of the ways that we move the needle the quickest when we're really involving the body in the work.
That makes total sense. And I have to tell you, I've never heard it discussed the way that you talk about it. And it is so enlightening. I was sharing it with friends before I talked to you, and I'm like, this is just, it makes so much sense. Is a light bulb moment. How did you get into the sexual aspect of the work? Was there like a personal thing that happened, or did
Yeah.
you have an aha moment?
Oh, there was a huge aha moment. And I love to tell the story. And I think a lot of your listeners, I hope, will be inspired by it. I really was in a place where I was very stuck in my life. I was in what really could be qualified as a sexless marriage. And that marriage did end, not just because of the sexlessness. There were a lot of other things going on there as well. But what was so interesting in that marriage, I remember really desiring to have a deep and meaningful and spiritual sexual connection with my partner, but I had no idea how to create it. And so I was very shut down sexually, very disinterested. That marriage ended, and fast forward a couple of years, I found myself in another relationship where the same pattern followed me. I really found myself just longing for something more, something deeper, and I had no idea how to create it. And so what I did was I just sort of did what I had done before, and I made my partner respond. I sort of blamed my partner for that lack of depth and lack of just really. I wanted to have like full body orgasms and these things I had only read about, and just kept finding myself very disappointed. But that relationship actually ended almost as quickly as it began. But where it left me was really realizing that if I wanted anything different in my life, I had to take responsibility for my own pleasure, for my own experience in sex. And so the funny thing is, I was actually in graduate school getting my master's degree in professional counseling. I was maybe 2 semesters in when I made this declaration. The relationship kind of crumbled, and I made this declaration to do something different. I was really going to figure out my own body, my own sexuality, my own energy, what felt good, what didn't. I really just wanted something different so badly. And something really miraculous happened within really within days of making that declaration and really deciding to learn about my body. I had a book that jumped off the shelf at me. I was at yoga one day and they had like a little boutique out in the waiting area, and this book jumped off the shelf at me. That was game changing. And then I had a random encounter with a somatic sex therapist that absolutely made me realize, like, oh my gosh, like this is the kind of work I want to do. And then a couple weeks after that, during one of the things I did was every week I made a date with myself to touch myself intimately, to be with my body. And I started really, cultivating more sensitivity. I learned how to be in my body, not up in my head and fantasy. I learned how to get rid of the goal of trying to get to climax or just get off. And something really incredible happened. I had this experience where this wave of pleasure just rolled up, literally started in the bottom of my feet,
Wow.
rolled up through my legs. I remember my face was like, it felt numb, and my hands felt like I had like giant moon gloves on, or everything was vibrating, and just this wave of pleasure and love rolled through my whole body. It shot out my heart, and all this love just flowed through me. And it was that moment, that was my aha moment where I realized, like, oh my gosh, I was having a full body orgasmic experience,
I
full
didn't
on.
even know
And
that was a thing, by the way, before I heard you say it. So I'm like mind blown.
oh, I can't wait. We can totally talk more about it because
Yeah.
it's really just a pathway. We all have access to that. And I talk a lot about that. It's not really about getting to some destination. It's about clearing the debris out of that pathway. The pathway for pleasure, orgasm, and love, it's already within us. And what keeps us from that are the obstacles that get in the way. And all I had done in just that short amount of time of really going into the study of my own body, my own sexuality, was I just removed some of that debris. And in that moment, I realized, like, oh my goodness, nobody else brings me pleasure. Nobody gives me love. And orgasm is something I have the ability to access. It's already within me. It's just right there. And I just made a declaration in that moment of I have got to help other women find this for them because it changed the rest of my life. And that was the day I decided when I'm going to definitely specialize in sex therapy, and I'm definitely going to go into somatics because that was the game changing piece for me. And so that was, only two semesters into my graduate program, and I knew right out of the gate that I was gonna go into sex therapy and specifically into somatic work.
It is incredible that you did that. I think we're taught so much about our development, our mental development, emotional development, physical development, never our sexual development. So the fact that you like took it upon yourself to get there is incredible. You talked a little bit about the debris. Is that debris? Because when I think of debris and what gets in the way for a lot of people is like shame around sex, shame around talking
Um,
around sex. Like, tell me more about the debris that people find gets in the way of them self
yes. Well,
discovery.
yeah, you're absolutely right. Shame is definitely one of them, but I'll simplify it even further than that. There's really one thing that gets in the way, and that's tension. Tension is really the biggest obstacle to pleasure, orgasm, and even, we all want connection. That's really what we're seeking most of the time when we want deeper, better sex. We're really looking for a deeper connection. There's three types of tension. We have emotional tension, mental tension, and physical tension. Most of our physical tension, if you've got tightness in the chest or tightness in your neck and shoulders, most of that is a result of emotional and mental tension. Now, if you just went to the gym and you lifted weights, or you went on a really long hike and you're a little sore, that might be a little bit different. But almost all of the tension that we feel in the body, that tightness in the chest, or the tightening in the throat, or the heaviness in the belly, most of that is related to mental or emotional tension. And how that's created, mental tension looks like, for example, being up in the head,
Hmm.
thinking about the to-do list, talking ourselves out of our feelings, right? Oh, you shouldn't be sad. You shouldn't be angry. You shouldn't feel ashamed. Don't feel that. That's wrong. That's what contributes to the emotional tension, where we're not able to actually metabolize the emotion that our body is naturally wanting to feel. Either it's not safe to feel it, or we have patterns. I know I grew up in a family where it was never okay to express anger. So I really
Yeah.
learned how to, like, right, like, don't feel anger. And that created a certain amount of tension unconsciously in my it's in our electromagnetics, which is our muscles and our nervous system. But what will happen over time from that mental and emotional tension, it will show up in the body as either numbness, like lack of sensation, or physical pain in the body, and even going as far as physical illness or imbalance in the body. So when we understand that, the pathway really just becomes about learning how to be present with sensations in the body, learning how to actually notice what's there and to be with them fully. So when I started on the self-pleasure practice that I did with myself every week, on that when I made that declaration, I had a lot of numbness in my genitals. I didn't have a lot of sensation in there. So what happened over time is I just got present with that, and I said yes to that. That shifted very quickly, and I had a lot of emotional debris that started to clear out. There was sadness, grief, anger, and from that, as I let my body metabolize those emotions that were very old, from just lots of things in my past, all of a sudden I went into the full body orgasmic state because that's actually what's
Wow.
there. That's the energy that's attached to all the, we say our negative emotions, those are still aspects of our libido. Libido is just our life force energy. And so the more we can just say yes to all of that, we actually drop into that orgasmic pathway. It's already there.
Okay, wait. I have to stop you. Libido is life force energy. That is such a interesting and profound statement because I think we just look at it as like whether or not we want to have sex. But that makes so much
Right.
sense. And lack of libido is, I feel like, the number one concern for so many women around my age group. So what you just said
Yes.
is so, so fascinating. Tell me more about how it is the life force energy.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to our good old friend Sigmund Freud, who I'm like not a huge fan.
Yes, yes, yes.
We just like, come on, we need to like retire a lot of that. But a lot of his work really initially started out, in fact, very somatic, very body based in a way. He came out of biological sciences and hypnosis and looking at the effect of how certain illnesses could even be cured through subconscious suggestion, autosuggestion. So there's really some things we've really gotten away from with Freud, but a lot of his stuff I think is just, yeah, I'm not like a huge fan.
Yeah.
However, that's kinda his definition of libido, the libidinal drives, like, it's not just genitals necessarily, it's about our lust for life, our drive, our desire to exist, our desire to experience, our desire, to be here, to be alive. That's really what libido means and really where what that word and where it comes from. And one of the ways that that expresses is through our desire to engage in sexual activity, but that's just one way. So if someone's disconnected from their libido, you know how, like what you just said, how we use it in today's world, it's just about, do I want to have sex or not? One of the ways we can tap into libido to getting back to that desire for sex is just finding our desire for life again. How do we reconnect with the things that bring us joy and the things that we're interested in, the things that are fun, the things that light us up? That's actually a gateway into getting back in touch with our sexual drive as well.
Yeah. So, okay, do you think that because women of a certain age, when we have kids and we have work
Mm.
stress, I feel like we're in this season of just so much mental debris, like you said, that's going on.
Yes.
Is it
Yes.
possible to clear that and create more libido or libido energy? I don't think that's the right term, but is it possible for us to clear that? Or is it also kind of a medical thing with like hormones? Because you hear about a lot about that too.
Yeah, I so hormones can absolutely play a role, generally speaking, unless you're for most people. Now, this isn't 100% across the board, but I would say most of the time it's not a hormonal or physiological basis. If you're going through menopause, you're postmenopausal, there can absolutely be a hormonal aspect to the loss of interest in sex. But I do want to say something about that really quick.
Yeah.
Studies have shown it's only about 50% of menopausal women who have a decline in interest in sex, and the other
Wow.
50%, yeah, and the other 50% either stay the same or it increases. So
I
I vow to be the one where I mean, I have a high drive anyway, so let's just hope it stays the same. We don't need it
yes.
to increase anymore.
I love this thought because it's like we're not medically broken. It's just
We're not.
it's really like a mental thing that's going on. This is huge.
Well, yeah, we're programmed. We're told, like, when you get to midlife, it all goes downhill and you're not gonna ever want sex, and that's not true. There's lots of things too. If you are a woman at midlife and you are experiencing a decrease, we can talk about what to do, but I also wanna talk about the women who are maybe not in that phase of life and they have a loss of interest in sex. If you've just had kids or you've got a really stressful career, our brain, we won't have good access to our desire for sexual activity if we're in high states of stress, where there's a lot of release of cortisol happening. When we have a child, I mean, that's an extremely beautiful time, but extremely stressful. We're not sleeping. We're, on demand 24/7 to tend to the needs of that child.
Amen.
You may also have a job outside the home in addition to the job in the home with the child and your partner. So that can really create where it's very hard for a woman to turn off the prefrontal cortex, which is that's the problem solving part of the brain. Also, the part of the brain that is our amygdala, which is scanning the environment for threats. Which of course we're going to do if we're protective over a child, if we're trying to hold a household together. Those parts of our brain have to quiet down for our sexual desire to come online and for for our nervous system literally to shift into what's called the parasympathetic nervous system, coming out of that sympathetic, which is fight or flight, but also like the get shit done mode. We
Yeah.
have to come out of that and into the like, okay, it's safe. I can let my guard down. Someone's got the kid, the house, no one's gonna hear it, like that's it too. If the kids are just down the hall, we're trying to be quiet, and oh my gosh, like that's not a state where the libido can really come online, where that sexual desire and the pleasure and the orgasm can come online. So oftentimes when a woman is in that stage of life, there has to be a lot more intentionality, and often she may need a lot more time before she's really going to be able to drop into that place where she can experience and receive pleasure, and become orgasmic and does even desire that. It's going to take some intentionality, and that's not an easy task.
What you just said is everything. I feel like this is sex ed for adults and like real life sex ed. Okay, so
Yeah.
how do we get there? How do you get to a place where you can really relax and go into your say it again. Say it again.
The parasympathetic nervous
Thank you
system.
so much.
Yes.
How do
Yeah.
we do that? I feel like it's like code switching almost.
It is like code switching. Yes, it is. I mean, very much so. And I think it really depends on your circumstances. If you're in a house where you have young children, it is going to probably require finding some childcare to have them in the hands of someone whom you trust, or being able to remove yourself from the house, taking you and your partner, make it intentional, rent a hotel or get out, go somewhere where you can be private. If you can't do the opposite,
Yeah.
you need to be able to really be intentional about that time where as women, like we are plugged into our environment. Like it's just the nature of things. I know when my kids were in the house, I mean, psychically, I was plugged into, I knew where everyone was in the house at any one time.
Yep.
I could feel when somebody was, like really intensely like on their computer or up in their head or, I just could feel it. And so it was very hard for me to disconnect from that. So you have to just be intentional, and that has to be built into the relationship. And ideally, if you don't have kids yet, think about that now, because once the kids are there, it's a lot harder to create think of it as like a habit and a pattern. Like we have to go to the gym, we have to brush our teeth, like we have to do certain things to maintain ourselves in life.
Yeah.
And this is really one of them. It's really critical if we want to keep the health of that relationship and keep the sex alive, even in the face of having all these other stressors that happen.
Yeah. So I want to ask you some technical questions specifically about women because I was talking about this again with friends and like we all have the same kind of questions and misunderstandings because we don't talk about this enough. We don't talk about
Yeah.
with the experts. And like if you Google this, like God only knows what will come up. So
Yeah.
the first one is the ability for women to orgasm from penetrative sex.
Yes.
Are there people who cannot do that?
I believe there's some people who have not experienced that yet, who
Hmm.
might believe that they cannot do it because they've been told. There's a myth out there that I don't know what the percentage is, 30% of women or 70, it's some ridiculously large
Yes.
percentage,
Yes.
that this percentage of women cannot experience orgasm during penetrative sex. And one of the reasons they think is because the clitoris is too far from the entrance of the vagina. I call BS.
Okay.
I call BS on that, because what I have learned and what I understand is that orgasm is a pathway, and it can be found and it can be learned. And it's not, the clitoris is great, but that is not the only pathway to orgasm. And there's been too much emphasis out there in our mainstream Western sexological studies and approaches and discourse, books by some really great authors who have written some really fabulous books, but they put way too much emphasis on the clitoris is what it's all about. It's not all about the clitoris. The clitoris is awesome. It's a source of pleasure. Yes, it's a type of orgasm that everybody can find. Everybody can find access to that regardless of where it's located and how far it is from the opening of the vagina, but it is not the only pathway. We have numerous other pathways to orgasm. And if it weren't so much for this hyper focus on the clitoris is the only pathway, I think that a lot more women would be liberated and really be able to have many different types of orgasms and orgasmic experiences. So it's just a pathway. And
Yeah.
that's all it is, learning to find that pathway. And I believe everybody has the ability to find that pathway for themselves with their body exactly the way their body's designed.
Okay. Can everyone achieve orgasm?
I believe absolutely, yes, everybody can achieve orgasm.
Okay.
Unless you have a actually, you know what? No, even if you have a physiological From, like, I watched this, there was a lesson that I did through some of my somatic training where this man actually had a severed spinal cord, so he wasn't able to have an erection and have a genital orgasm. He learned how to have an orgasm by being stimulated on his thumb. His thumb.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fascinating. You are turning everything on its head. I love it so much. You touched on this before. Men and women are different. I think that there are a lot of women who feel guilt with their partners if like they are suffering from low libido and they do have to like get more comfortable with that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the facts are the facts. And so if that's what's happening, I would encourage you to discover what is it for you. A lot of times what's fed to us as women is we think that we should be just like our male partners. If a
Mhm.
man can get it up real easy and he can reach orgasm really easily, there's this myth and this belief we have that because my body isn't responding in that same way, something's wrong with me. Your partner may even reinforce that unintentionally.
Yep.
Right? Like, why isn't your body responding the way I want it to? Or the way, something must be wrong. We need to fix this. And really what that's gonna do, it's gonna add more of that tension, like we talked about earlier, right? It's gonna add something's wrong with me, something needs to be fixed. Now I'm up in my head thinking about it. What could be wrong? What could I do? So it takes us away from where we wanna go. The place we wanna go is to connection. Can I breathe into my body right now? Can I notice what I feel in my body right now? Can I say yes to that? Even if it's numbness or nothing, I always love that because anytime I hear that, I'm like, oh, there is just a wellspring of stuff underneath that. I know that there is. So the more we meet and greet what is exactly as it is, we slow down, we breathe, we give ourselves time. We never give ourselves the time. Some of us need a lot of time to really feel into what would feel good for us right now. And guess what? It might look like having penetration right away.
Yeah.
We might need just a sensual massage or some cuddling or maybe just talking. And I always say, like, limit the talking 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then zip it because
Okay.
talking
Yes.
women, we always wanna talk, "Let's talk and let's be all it takes us up into our prefrontal cortex, into this part of the brain, which is gonna turn off the aspect that we want to be in, which is more of a relaxed state where we're not in the chitty-chatty, forebrain, where we're really in our parasympathetic relaxed nervous system. So talk for 5 or 10 minutes, and then just come into the body, focus on the feelings, focus on what you need, even if it's, "I feel ashamed right now."
Mhm.
Can you say yes to that feeling and be with it and breathe through it and find and allow whatever else is there under that to just be felt? And the more we do that, the more we actually are able to open ourselves and to connect with ourselves. From there, now we have a deeper connection with another person. Automatically, it's just that it's a byproduct of that deeper connection with ourselves.
So I'm really using my prefrontal cortex right now and thinking about like the scheduling of all this. Do you recommend that people have these 5 to 10 minute conversations right before they are intimate? Or is this something like kind of like you should go to like a
Mm.
daily therapy type of, when the sun's out and the world's revolving, you're not really into that intimacy setting yet?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like a big sometimes talking needs to happen, and it's such an communication is such an important part of an intimate relationship, but I think a lot of couples get stuck there. They've talked it out, and now they're stuck in communication loops that aren't really leading anywhere, and that's when talking is too much. Let's just do no talking. Let's
Yes.
not have talking at all. But what I'm saying is sometimes the plate needs to be cleared before. I know this has been true for me. Like, I need to speak something to my partner. I just need to speak truth and have him hear it. And now my heart is open. Up to that, I'm whole. I might be withholding, or there's tension, or I'm a little bit angry or resentful. There's a tightening in my chest. So, what I'll do with myself is I'll see, well, what is it that I need? And I recommend everyone ask themselves this question: what do I need right now? Feeling disconnected from my partner. I'm feeling like I'm not open to him. I'm not interested in having sex right now. What is it that I would need so that maybe I could relax, I could open, I could let down that wall? And I identify what that is. And it might be that I need to express this to him. I need to be heard in this. And often it's that simple. I can just say, hey, this happened and I'm feeling this. And that's how that impacted me. And it can be very, very quick. And the next thing you know, I'm back into connection. My body's open, my heart's open, my pussy's open. And I'm like, okay. So I think we have to use that just sort of on an as needed basis, but this is not like, let's sit down and talk about it for 2 hours.
Yeah.
That's a buzzkill, like, no one's gonna wanna feel like having sex after
No,
that.
and good luck getting some people to sit down and have that conversation with you for 2 hours or
Yeah.
even 5 to 10
Right.
minutes. It's possible that it won't happen. It's such a
Yeah.
hard thing though, because I think culturally we're taught, like, even the words, like you said, pussy, like, that is a word that, like, people
Yeah.
cringe when they hear. Like, we are taught by society that, like, this is taboo. This is bad.
Yeah.
This is, like, something that you need to be doing, like, in the shadows. How do we get past that mindset?
Well, I think it begins with getting just we have to get comfortable with ourselves first, comfortable with accept your own body. And I think finding language that works for you. We don't have to use the slang terms. I often don't even use that word pussy. Sometimes I do. I use a lot of different words for the
Yeah.
genitals. But I think it's we get comfortable with our own sexuality and we do what works for us. We don't there's no requirement that being liberated in your sexuality means you have to, join a swingers club or, run around downtown topless. Like it doesn't have to look that way. Sexual liberation is really about just being authentic to what's true for you, to be comfortable in your sexuality and to wear it. What I like to say is like wear your sexuality like you wear your favorite pair of jeans.
Hmm.
It's comfortable, it's familiar, it's authentic to you, it feels good to walk around in. That's what liberation looks like to me if we're liberated in our sexuality. So I think there's sometimes this idea that it has to, oh my gosh, I've never been to a sex party, therefore I'm not liberated, or I believe in monogamy, so I must not be very sexually open minded. Like none of that is true. We all find what works for us. And I think the more that we do that and we get unafraid of speaking out and honestly, having conversations like this, it normalizes the conversation. I think that's so important that more of us do that and that we do it publicly.
Yes. So in conversations I've had with people, they have said that, sometimes you got to just do it for your husband, do it for your partner. Is that
Mm.
something that you should be doing?
Well, yes and no. I think yes, to a certain extent, it's not fair to bind someone into monogamy and then refuse to have sex with them. How
Hmm.
is that fair, right? There's something about that that really just isn't right. So I think we do have to come to an understanding of the difference between wanting, meaning I have a desire, it's my desire, and then being willing. It's not my desire, but I'm really willing with a full heart to give that. We have to really get that clarity. That's a lot of the work that I do with couples. That's a large part of the work that I do at the Pleasure Keys retreats, which I know we'll be chatting about a little bit
Yes,
later,
we
is really
will.
how do we know the difference between those two things? Is what happens a lot is couples will be in a state of, well, I don't want it and she didn't want it, so just nobody
Yep.
did it. Nobody
Yep.
did anything.
Yep.
But when we can come to a place of understanding, okay, right now my partner's desiring this. It's not like my desire at this moment. Maybe I could identify some things that would help me desire it. That could happen. What would I need? What would I need so that I would be able to or willing? But we also have the state of willingness, which is really just like it's not my desire. My desire is gonna be my desire is maybe to like go to sleep right now, but you're really wanting some intimate engagement. So, am I willing at this moment to put my desire for sleep just kind of on the shelf for a minute and to be able to give to you something that you're wanting right now with a full and open heart? And if so, what is it? What am I? Maybe it's not full on intercourse, but maybe I am willing just to be with you and to, have some eye contact or breathing. Maybe I'm willing to give you a hand job or a blow job. Maybe I'm willing if you were just, maybe give me a little bit of a massage and promise me you'll make breakfast for me in the morning so I don't have to get up really early before work, then I would be more than willing and happy and joyful to make love with you right now. So it's a bit of a negotiation, and I think that can be extreme. A lot of people think, oh, that's just so like not sexy. It doesn't have to be unsexy. It doesn't have to be a business meeting. We can make that whole negotiation, that engagement can be exceptionally sexy. It's all about how we do it and how we approach it.
This all makes so much sense. And, like, I love talking about it because I think it is something that, heard this way, it never happens. So,
Yeah.
you have said before that if we have better sex or more sex, the world would change. And I happen to agree with that. I think that one of the ways, though, that we need to get there is by teaching younger generations that, like, this sexual
Yes.
development is important. How do we do that appropriately?
I think the good news is there's a lot changing already around sexuality, and I would say the younger generations are already like miles ahead,
Hmm.
miles ahead of really what it was like for when I was growing up, and probably same for you. But I think how we do it is through having conversations like this, and having more platforms where these conversations can happen. And really, I think it comes down to normalizing, making it normal to talk about these things, and then also like a real education, having a real education around sex and sexuality, because I'll tell you, we don't get it in school. Most of us aren't getting it from our parents, and our friends are just as blind as we are usually.
100%.
So how do we do that? We have to be willing to read, to study, to learn, to work with professionals, and to really just start with our own bodies, right? We all have access to that, and that's free. You can do that starting today.
Yeah. I don't think people look at sex enough about like your overall health. Like it really should be
Yeah.
a central component just as much as we're taking all these supplements and focusing on our protein count. Like sex should be a part of that and it's not.
Absolutely. I think we underestimate how much sex influences all of those aspects of our life. It really does. I mean, it's how we all got here. Like, hey, newsflash, there was
Yes.
a vagina involved in your coming into this earth, and I'm pretty sure a penis was there too. So
Yes. Yes. So on that note, are there asexual people? Is that a real thing?
yeah, I think the jury is a little bit out on that for me personally. I think there are definitely people who believe that they are asexual, and I think there's definitely certainly people um, who don't feel any kind of lust for life or any kind of desire to be sexual. I do think that that exists. I mean, I know that I have felt that way when I was in my marriage. I felt extremely asexual. It was so like night and day though, man. When I left that marriage, it was like, whoa, like someone flipped a switch, and I was like, wow, okay, I'm definitely not asexual.
Wow.
Um, I would never, everyone is entitled to have their sexuality and to give a label to it that works for them. And if the label of being asexual works, I'm not someone to come in and tell someone that they're not. But my belief is that we all have asexuality, that it's not possible to not have sexuality. It's just not possible because of how our world is designed and how we are designed as human beings. We are sexual by nature. All of creation is sexual
Yes.
by nature. You don't have to look too far out the window to see
You're so
that
right.
sex is everywhere, and that's a beautiful thing.
That makes I love how this is such like a connection to nature and spirituality and it's just again, I know I keep on saying it, but it really is thinking about things in such a different way. I want to switch gears and ask you about pop culture because we do talk a lot about pop culture on this podcast and sex is all over our pop culture. How do
Yes.
you think that affects us like in terms of how it's displayed? I don't know if you saw Hunting Wives or Euphoria or Sex in the City, those types of displays of sex. How do you think that affects us?
Yeah, I'm a little old school, so I think Sex and the City is the only
Yes,
on that
okay,
list, so
okay. Well,
I'm up
Hunting
to
Wives,
speed.
let me tell you, Hunting Wives was a whole thing. It was
All
like
right.
it was
I'm getting it.
yeah, it was like this much sex and like this much plot line, and people loved it.
Yeah, I'm sure. All right, that one's on the list. Is that on Netflix or which
It is
one
on
streaming?
Netflix. Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
It's going on my watch list. That's on the list for this week. Um, yeah, so, and I haven't seen those 2, but pop culture, I think the message that is often portrayed is often works against us as women for most women. I'm gonna speak to women's sexuality because I think this is really where a lot of the obstacles come into play. Most of what we tend to see in media and in pop culture is what works tends to work for most men, which is where, arousal happens very quickly, spontaneously. The orgasm is very easy, it happens very fast, and then everything's kind of that's great and everyone's happy. That is very much a one-dimensional portrayal of sex that is all about I won't even call that orgasm, I'm gonna call it climax. It's only one way that we can experience orgasm is through that kind of climax, which is fine. The problem with that is that as women, we tend to, believe that our bodies are supposed to behave that way, and then when they don't, we think something's wrong with us, and we're labeled, even by the medical community, as being sexually dysfunctional. One of the studies that I cite on that was a 2005 study done by Yale University, Edward Einstein University, and Yale, where they They concluded that 48.2% of the women in the study were sexually dysfunctional due to lack of orgasm and lack of sensation in the clitoris. So
Wow.
that, yeah, and that's not a dysfunction, people. That's just called like A, I never took time to sensitize my clitoris, and B, I haven't found the pathway to orgasm.
Yeah.
And yet they're labeled as dysfunctional. So the medical world is not helping us out, and neither is the media. And so that's what I think the problem is with a lot of the portrayals in pop culture around sexuality, is that it's largely what works for men, and we're sort of left out of the narrative as women, and therefore we think we're broken when our bodies don't do what we think they're supposed to do.
Wow. Your messaging is so important. Like, I'm very much into functional medicine and like really mixing Western with Eastern. And the fact that this can be brought into the sexual field just is so enlightening. I want to ask you now about pleasure keys. Talk to me
Yes.
about this framework, how you developed it, and what it actually is.
Yes, the pleasure keys is a there's 3 triads that consist of 3, like, principles, each what I call wisdom codes, and the 3 triads are sort of they kind of work together and function together, but really what it is, it's a framework for understanding how to drop into the body and how to start to access desire and pleasure, and how to start to negotiate when there's differences in desire between 2 people, which is one of the most common problems I see couples face, what we clinically call desire discrepancy. One person wants one thing, the other person wants another, and how do we bridge that gap? So that's the third triad of the pleasure keys, is really that the triad of negotiating when 2 people are on different pages, how do we get back on the same page? And where a lot of couples get mixed up and get stuck, they try to jump into that negotiating phase before they have mastered the skills of the first 2 triads.
Mm.
So some of the things, so by the way, there is a resource that I'll give to your listeners if they want to learn that first triad of the pleasure keys.
Oh,
I have
thank you.
an e-guide on that. It's called Pleasure Keys, and it's at pleasurekeys.com. It's free, but it goes over really what are those first 2 principles that we must master. How I learned some of this, it's really like a synthesis of different approaches that I have experienced and learned and applied to my own life over the last 15 years that I've been on this journey of sexual exploration, sexual awakening. And it really marries some of the Taoist sexual principles of really non-goal oriented, learning how to be in the body, not up in the mind. And then this idea of cultivating direct sensation through the nerve endings on the body directly up to the brain, so coming out of that tendency to rely on mental fantasy, for example, which is one way of experiencing pleasure, what we're really doing is coming out of the head and into the body. So there's 3 principles in that first triad where we really work with relaxing. How do we relax the body? We must be relaxed. Relaxation is key to experience pleasure and desire. First and foremost, we have to learn how to relax the body. Where is our awareness held? We have to learn how to be in the body, not up in the head. And then, that what that automatically creates is the ability to be present, to be here now, to be in this moment now, because if we're not able to do that, we're not going to be able to know what we want, what we like, where is my yes, where is my no? If we don't have good access to that, forget about negotiating an experience where both people are gonna be happy,
Yep.
and get back on the same page. We have to have good access to that within our own self first. Otherwise, that negotiating tends to turn into what I call a train wreck.
Mm-hmm. 100%. This is amazing. So, if someone wants to go to your Pleasure Keys retreat, what does that retreat look like? As I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about people being like, I don't have time to do this, but
Uh-huh.
how this is so important, right? Like, this is,
Yes.
talk to me about the importance of this in terms of our entire lives.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, we if you want anything different in your anything in life that we want to see a change, or we want to make a change, and we have to be willing to invest our energy into that. And that means making time, creating time, and finding the resources to invest in that. And that is just a fact of life. And what I love about the retreat format, one of the things I found over years of working with couples, meeting once a week for a session, sort of that session bait, which I still do that. I still do private coaching and sort of the weekly. I do different ways I work with my couples, but to be able to be pulled away from your day to day life and completely immersed for 3 days in some ways can be much more impactful for some couples because you're not distracted by whatever's in your house and your familiar surroundings, your job commitments, and then you sort of lose that through line when you're only meeting every week or every other week. Coming into a retreat setting, in a lot of ways, what I've seen, it really helps couples like get it much more quickly. And from there, they've got that foundation now, and they can really build on that once they've attended the retreat. Um, the retreat also, what I wanna say about it, I think a lot of couples it's hard to know what to expect when you don't know what to expect, and this is new. This is not it's not a sex retreat, it's not a swingers club.
Yep.
We Yeah, right, 'cause
You're not
I
gonna be
had that. I
sitting
had a
on a mat, spread eagle, like, with your partner
No.
with 25 other couples there. Okay, good.
Exactly, yeah, I had a couple that came and, his wife, he told me after that, "Oh, my wife thought we were going to some kind of, like, a sex party." I'm like, "How that
Well, she was
translated?" Like,
willing to go to that. I guess maybe
she
that's the
showed
discussion
up.
point.
I
Yeah.
thought that we cleared that up beforehand in the pre-retreat interview, but okay. So note to self, let me make it really clear. No, we're fully clothed and my retreats, I cap it at 10, no, never any more than 10 couples, and usually it's closer to about 6. So these are small and intimate environments, and you don't come on there and just start, disclosing everything about your sex life. You're really just with your partner the whole time, and it's really about going deep with your partner and learning. What we're really doing is at the retreats is just learning this skill set of how do we build that foundation for understanding and learning how to get back on the same page. That's really what the pleasure keys are for. And I lead you through the process just very gently and experientially. So we're doing experiential activities. It's not just theory, it's not just talking about it. I really take you into the lived experience of what each principle is and how you feel that in your own body. So that's one way that we really learn the best. I do offer the intellectual side as well. I think we have to have both for good integration. So there's different ways that we learn. We have visual learners, auditory learners, and kinesthetic, which is that body based doing you learn through doing. So in my retreats, I really try to incorporate all three of those learning styles so that can help, if someone's primarily visual or kinesthetic, every learning style is going to be addressed to that retreat. But there is very much an emphasis on the doing and the experiential learning because that is really where that rubber meets the road and where you're going to build that foundation so that you can leave that retreat knowing that from that point moving forward, you'll be able to know why you're stuck and where you're stuck and how to get yourself unstuck. If we don't know how to even know what's going on or why we're stuck, how can we even talk about like getting unstuck and getting back on the same page? The pleasure keys are really designed to give you that roadmap so you can very easily see, okay, let's go back to this. So I'll give you something here, the 3 N's. That's the second triad of the pleasure keys. And that very first N is noticing, that skill of noticing. And almost always that's sort of like what we come back to. Let's go back to noticing. What do I notice? What do I notice? What do I notice? That's like our guiding light for almost all of the other principles that I teach in the other two triads. So it's very much a roadmap. And once you learn that, you have that shared language with your partner. It becomes less personal when things kind of get wonky.
Yeah.
And oftentimes then we have the skills and we have the roadmap to find our way out of that stuck place.
Can I ask what the other two ends are?
Yes. So we have noticing, and that's the first N, right? Noticing sensations. What do I feel? What do I want? Or what do I need? All right. So I'm scanning my body, scanning my awareness. What do I need? What do I want? The second one is the ability to name that. Can I name that? Right now, what I need is, right now, what I most want is. So we learn how to name that. Now, this is before any kind of doing happens, all right? So often we're rushing forward into the doing of the thing. Like, oh, you want that thing? Okay, let me just do it. Or we
Yeah.
don't even get to the noticing and name. We just start doing. And then we wonder why our bodies are shutting down, or why isn't she opening up to me? Why doesn't she want to have sex with me?
Or why
You know,
isn't
like,
this lasting? If it worked once, why isn't
yes.
it? If I'm you got to put in the work.
Exactly. So we learn how to first notice and name. And then the third N is that the N of negotiating. That takes us into that third triad of the pleasure keys, which is much more nuanced and complex. We can't, I don't,
Yes.
we're not able to get into that one today. But those are the first two pieces, notice, name, and then we go into the negotiation of it, which again is a whole other nuanced skill set in and of itself. But anytime we get lost, we go back to that. Let me notice and let me name. If I'm having a hard time noticing, we go back to the first triad, relaxation, presence, awareness. Where's my attention right now? In my head or in my body? quickest way to the present moment is through the body. Can I notice sensations right now? What do I feel? Just bringing the awareness back to physical sensation is the quickest way to get out of the head and into the body. So the triads just give us that roadmap and can simplify what often is very confounding and confusing to many couples.
Yes, I feel like you have probably saved so many marriages and enhanced people's relationships, even if they aren't married. Can you share
Thank
with
you.
me a success story that you've had without names, of course?
Absolutely, yes, and thank you for that. I have had couples tell me, "You saved our marriage," and I don't ever take credit for that because they are the ones that did the work and showed up and were brave and willing and courageous, and yes, I was there, and I'm happy to be part of that and witness that, but I'll never take that credit fully, but thank you for that. I'll tell you, this one's a really good one. So I had oh gosh, there's so many good ones. I'm trying to think what would be best for your audience. I would say that this one's real. I'll use this one because it's a very good example and a lot of, like, very concrete things that I can give. I had a couple that I was working with who came to me who kept having these train wreck moments every time they would be intimate. Things would just get wonky very quickly, they'd go south fast, and to the extent they had so much anxiety around being intimate together, they were avoiding intimacy. And one of the things that was happening was he was, going down on her, and, she wasn't really responding very much, and so, like, in his head, he's like, "Well, like, maybe she's not attracted to me. What am I doing wrong?" And in her head, she was thinking, "I really don't care for this,
Hmm.
but I know a lot of other women orgasm from oral sex, so maybe I should be liking it more. Maybe something's wrong with me because I'm not reaching orgasm. Maybe it's what he's wanting, and I need to act like I'm liking it." But no one was talking about this, and so it was just sort of this subtle awkwardness that would happen, and he'd kind of be like, "Well, she's not really responding, so maybe I'll stop," and, she was trying to act like she liked it, but he could tell that was fake, and so it was this whole mess that was happening, and one of the things I helped them to clarify, this is an aspect of the pleasure keys, by the way, it's in the 3rd triad, is understanding, identifying who is this happening for? So, when we have something that's going down that's really wonky like this, and we don't really understand why this is going south, if we just pause for a minute and identify who is the doing happening for? Who's the touch happening for? Whoever's doing the doing, who is this for right now? Well, come to find out in that scenario, he was doing it because he just kind of thought like, well, this is like the next logical thing
Yep.
to do,
Yep.
right? Like, I guess I'll just, we kiss a little bit, now I'll just go down on her.
The manual
Uh,
says this is what I must do. Yes.
yeah, pretty much. And I don't know, I guess she'll like it. He never checked that through with her. And her head, she thought, she just kind of thought, well, like maybe he's just doing this because he likes it. I don't know, or maybe I'm supposed to like it. Well, come to find out, like, neither of them wanted it. He admitted, like, "Oh, well, I don't know, I was just kinda doing it because I thought that was the thing to do," and she admitted, like, "I really don't get a lot out of oral sex, nothing against you, I've just never it's never really been my thing, like, I don't get off on it, I mean, it feels okay, but it's not, like, my favorite thing." So come to find out, like, no, neither of them wanted the thing that was happening.
Yeah.
And so the light bulbs came on for them in that moment, and as soon as that happened, it was no longer this personal rejection of anybody. Nobody was broken or needed to feel something that they weren't feeling or like something that they didn't like. It was like, "Hey, nobody is wanting this. This is for nobody right now. It's not for her and it's not for him." So from there, we could apply that same principle to some other areas of their sex life where we brought that illumination and got that clarity, and they were freed, and that was a huge game changer to the extent that they were able then to start to have more intimacy and more sex without it going south, without having these train wrecks. They were able to speak up and say, "This one's not really for me right now, like, could we try something different?" Huge game changer, and so absolutely that relationship was drastically improved and quite possibly saved.
Not to mention, I'm sure that that communication went into other aspects of their life. Like, these are
Yes.
really life skills that can be attributed to so much and really make people so much happier. You are benefiting society so much. Like, I want you to shout this from the rooftops because I think it is such a different way of thinking that so many people do not talk about. Where can they find you? Where can they find this information? Tell me all the things.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. And yes, so you can find the e-guide that I wrote on that first triad of the pleasure keys is available at pleasurekeys.com. and go
We'll, of
straight
course,
there.
link it in the show notes, of course.
Link in the show notes. And then all of my offerings live at my website, pathwaytopleasure.com. You can find out about my couples retreat. So I have a retreat called the Pleasure Keys where we learn those 3 tides. We talked about that a minute ago. That's at pathwaytopleasure.com. Up in the nav bar, you'll see a little, I think it's under work with me, and there's a tab there for the retreat. And anything about private coaching, all of my stuff lives there. There's also a link to my podcast, Sex Talk Cafe, which is all about
Yes.
this real education, just like what you're doing here with this podcast. That's also available at pathwaytopleasure.com.
And you will learn so much also from your podcast, different things that we didn't even touch on today. It truly is such a good listen. Susan, I cannot thank you enough for being here. I am so excited for my listeners to hear this. I think we're really going to change some relationships and answer a lot of questions. So thank you so much.
Well, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me as your guest.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Shut Up, Tell Me More. You can find us on Instagram at Shut Up, Tell Me More. Remember to subscribe to the podcast. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, go to the show page and click the follow plus sign. If you listen on Spotify, click the follow button. You can also find us on YouTube. You'll automatically receive new episodes as they come out, as well as updates. Doing this also helps me algorithm land, so thanks in advance. Lastly, give me a 5-star review, and I'll be so grateful. See you in the next one.